Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world.
Welcome to the next episode of Decoding AQ. Again, live from Vegas, our series here. This is my fourth recording for the day. And with me, I have Jamie Durling, another New Yorker. He is the Strategic Operating Officer and he's a HR executive. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
All right, so as a Strategic Operating Officer and a HR executive, you've been really dealing with transformation, cultural change, and led lots of large-scale projects in luxury retail and trade shows, media, and people's strategies that really deliver sustainable growth. So I'm going to be excited to dive into what does that actually really mean. And let's start with, you told me you were on a panel earlier today. Tell me a bit more about that panel, Jim.
Yeah, I was reached out to by the folks here at Transform, and they thought that my participation in this panel on adaptability and change would be interesting, given my history and my past. And it was fascinating to be a part of it. We really talked about, from a personal space, personal experiences that we had with going through change and adapting during periods of change ourselves, and how scary that could be. And we told some really personal stories, and it was quite impactful because the audience related to what it was that we were saying. So it was less academic and more real life and our reality, lived experience, 100%.
So your story, was it out of interest, was it a change that you chose, or was it a change that chose you?
It was not a change that I chose. It was a change that chose me.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me more. Tell me more about that.
So a number of years ago, I've always thought of myself as a somewhat decent HR professional. And I was in my first complete head of HR role for a company, and I was called into my boss's office, the CEO, and he said, "Jamie, I'm going to make you responsible for 2.25 lines on the P&L. So I've seen a P&L before, but being responsible for lines on the P&L, that's never happened. I've never had that responsibility.
In a HR role?
In an HR role.
Interesting.
And of course, there were areas that I could influence, but really being responsible for managing the numbers and the data, not so much. And I was scared out of my mind, and I didn't know what that meant. I was not unclear as to what he wanted me to manage. I asked some clarifying questions. I actually asked the audience earlier today, who has in the audience who has nodded during the meeting and in like acknowledgement that they understand something while they're actually at the same time Googling what does it mean? What does it mean for HR to manage part of a P&L? But I did, and I understood what he meant, the personnel costs, which we had for corporate and then for retail, because I work in a retail organization, as well as the non-personnel operating costs for the organization. And it was scary. I was scared out of my mind. I'm not a math person. I'd never managed, I managed a budget, but now it's very, very different. And now it's the ups and the downs. So as we do more, as we grow, do I need to drive with more FTE? How do I balance the personnel costs with the actual EBITDA that we're generating and the profitability of the business? And so I knew nothing about this. And I engaged who's now one of my closest friends, the CFO of the company, and who, by the way, all HR executives should make their CFO their BFF. 100%. The two of you will rule the world, or at least the organization. And
if you're hearing the music in the background, they've just turned it up here, so I apologize if we can't edit all of that out, but we'll do our best.
And he gave me a masterclass. The same way that I give him a masterclass on how to navigate certain employees on his team and manage the performance and manage sensitive situations and relationships. We're not used to that in HR.
No.
We're usually giving it, not receiving it. And so he did, and I trusted him. There was psychological safety with him. And he trained me, and then I applied my understanding of the commercial business
Yeah.
in managing what is productivity in the retail organization, actually any commercial or sales-driven organization, and wound up developing an expertise in this. And going from something that scared the daylights out of me.
Yeah. And going, what does this actually really mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
How do I do it?
Yeah.
To now teaching other people how to do it.
Wow.
And now being on this podcast and answering your question on change and adaptability. But I was scared, and I leaned into that.
Yeah. I think it's true for many that when we face something that we're unfamiliar with, perhaps we don't have the capability yet, is an instant response is fear and excitement, right? That duality of those things, depending on your state. What is your current state? Are you fearful for your value, for your contribution, or is this an extension of your value and contribution? How you then respond to that will be situational, right? Of that. So I guess by the sounds of it, you had quite a safe environment to ask questions, to be able to explore, able to figure that out, and able to learn, that was supportive through that. Has there been situations that you've been in where that hasn't been the case? You've had an expectation put on you, but then not the resources or support around to help you gain that capability?
For sure, there have many a number of situations across my career.
Yep.
And if I think of one that is more recent, let's say over the past couple of years, it was frankly achieving a percentage of payroll without increasing the FTE of the corporate office, even though the number of employees in the organization and the number of points of sale in the organization were increasing substantially.
Interesting.
And
do more with less.
Do more with less.
We've heard it.
And I'm concerned about burnout of my employees. I'm really concerned about the burnout. And so I push them to perform. I want them to be productive.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing about
Where's
the bottom line, but there's a limit.
Cost?
So this is where I say oftentimes I'm living with a devil and an angel on my shoulder, because I want you to do more with less, but at the same time, I don't want you to burn out. So that was frustrating. And to be very transparent with you, is impossible. So what I did was I said, here's what, regardless of whether or not I got the support or not, and the resources that I needed, I put the business case together. I put a plan together, a proposal for, the functions and the departments that needed the headcount increase and what the impact on the P&L would be and the cost. Given my recent, somewhat quasi-expertise on this, and I partnered closely with my finance colleague, and ultimately didn't get what I requested. But what I did, though, was I was very factual in the need, and I connected all the dots. So nobody could say I didn't try. And I didn't make the effort. And that's what I did. So that, in that situation, for me, I was able to go to bed at night knowing I did the best I could do.
So what happens next? How do you feel about that? So does that inspire you to be more creative, to find the alternative solution, to stick to this is what I need, and try different ways to convince, to evidence, to get a different decision? Or no, I've got to find new alternative solutions within those constraints, or this isn't for me? What were some of the sort of thoughts that were going on? Maybe all of the above in seconds and minutes?
100%.
What was going on?
It's a good question. So certainly not, this isn't for me, because it was for me. I documented the journey. And even though I was told that we weren't going to be able to invest in that function or in that group, the corporate office, I took it as a challenge.
So was the documentation to be able to reflect, learn, and give you the nuances of the challenge of, well, where could I go? I've done this. Or was it to cover myself? What was the motivation?
No, it was part of the convincing. It was part of the storytelling. Like, here's what we need.
This is what it is.
For the interlocutor, for the audience, or for my CEO. Here's how I got there. So we need X number of FTE additional
here's
corporate
my assumptions,
in these 100%. And here are the numbers, and here's where we need to go. But I was being at that moment a little too I was being too traditional in my thought process.
Interesting.
And to your question, it made me think, all right, well, we still need to achieve these goals
Yeah.
and we need support. How can we do it?
Yeah.
So then I leaned onto, well, what if we don't have committed expense in terms of personnel, but it's more transitional expense with temporary employees or outsourcing some of the support that is needed. And ultimately, we went with the outsourcing. And was it done the way that I would have preferred it? At the end of the day, no. I would have preferred to have our own employees who understood the culture, but at the end of the day, we were able to accomplish a whole lot. Earlier today, when I had my panel and my session, I said one of the best lessons that I learned was that from my first boss was that, Jamie, you need to know, you're a perfectionist, but you need to know when 80% is good enough. And so in a situation like this where I knew that we needed to really keep our EBITDA strong, and we were not in a position yet to invest too much, I knew it was the right thing to do, and it was the right approach. And so I slept well at night.
Yeah, I guess that comes with the maturity of cascading effects and consequence. But often when we operate in our little silo of, no, this needs to be this way, we can't necessarily see the outer consequence in the 3 steps down the line to a decision here. And it's about understanding those linkages and then coming to terms with them. I remember my coach talks about creativity and resources in the entrepreneurial world of, if you can write a check for it, you've got a project. If you can't write a check for it, you've got a creative opportunity.
Yeah.
And that really dawned on me as a thing where, constantly that frustration of more with less, never having enough resource to going, that is the mother for innovation. That is the creative opportunity to think different ways, to attack it from a new perspective, to take it as a challenge, not as a, oh, well, they didn't listen to me. Don't they know I've got the right answers here? To go, how might we do? What does that do? So I live with it.
So what you're saying is deciding, and a wise man said this to me yesterday, are you a creator or a victim?
Yeah.
And in that moment, I decided I was not going to be a victim. I was going to be a creator. And try to do the impossible, which really wasn't that impossible. I just needed to shift my frame of mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how true is that you witness the experience for people you serve in the organizations that are going through transformation, going through changes, that perhaps their perception of reality of how things should be done, that they're wedded to because they've had an applause, they've had success, they've got a level of experience or knowledge in that, and you're asking them to do it differently, think differently, find other solutions. Having lived the experience you just lived, has that changed the way you design programs or the way you facilitate transformation and change in organizations?
I would say it's not necessarily changed the way that I go about doing it. It's just, it is reinforced.
Okay.
Yeah, it's reinforced. I believe with any change, it is important to bring people along for the ride and to fill them in as much as you can. It's about communication at the end of the day.
Yep.
I've learned this with employees, with leaders, people who I've reported to, people who have reported to me, and people who I've been responsible for. It is about communicating with them and being transparent, authentically transparent is critical. And so people ultimately, employees may ultimately not like what they're hearing. They will either consciously or unconsciously appreciate the candor and the transparency. You may not only bring them along for the ride, you may gain an advocate over time with the change, and you may not, but they're aware. So the rug is not being pulled out from underneath them.
I think it's an important point you made about transparency, about communication, but it's a challenging thing, right? Because as you mentioned, when you heard that change that was choosing you, we nod, we then try and Google to understand, and the concept of, selective attention. Our eyes only see and our ears only hear what our brain's looking for. So when you communicate authentically and transparently,
Yeah.
they'll see it and hear it through their own lived experience of, I'm fearful for my mortgage this week, or for my job, or what I might be next week, or this happening with my family. And so that news, that information, authentic and transparent, comes to me. But my interpretation, my story, my manifestation might mean dig in. It might mean jump on of those things. Do you have any ways in which you, when you're dealing with change, which is a traumatic process, right, of going through familiar to unfamiliar, where you nuance that communication to the person or to the audience or to the situation? Or is that a utopia that doesn't really exist? What's been your thought about that? Is that valuable or not valuable?
See, I think it's all about the perspective that people have on what change is. And I sincerely see change as opportunity.
Yeah.
Not every
You have that, neural net. Change is opportunity.
100%.
Change going to be good in the end.
or it can be good.
Can be
It
good.
can be good.
Yeah.
It's not going.
So
to
that's
be. It can
your
be. Yeah.
your mindset, your energy, your data points that you bring to the table.
What are the benefits? What are the risks? And how do we change?
Yep.
With emphasis on the benefits and being aware of what the risks are and mitigating the risks. Exactly. That's how I approach it, and that's how I engage the population. And I'll actually also speak with my superiors about it because that's everybody's feeling it the same.
Do you come across communities in past organizations or current organizations that are wired in the reverse? That they have the neural net that said, oh, each time change happened, I went down the snake, not went up the ladder on the snakes and ladders game of life. That, okay, I'm really got a trauma around change. You're this optimist, if we use this word. You're these,
I am an optimist. Yeah.
And hey, optimists, high five. We live longer, double bonus. Not only do we live longer, we're happier along the way. But there are different situations, even for optimists, where it's hard to find the silver lining. It's hard to find those things in certain changes, right? Whatever that might be about. Loss of a loved one or of a relationship. That relationship could be a human, or it could be a role, right? A loss of a role that that was, everything to me, can be a traumatic experience. And what we've found is that how do we support people through that process, that uncertainty of that duality of excitement, this is going to be good, but also the others that are saying, I'm not sure about this. I'm not in a place where I can handle that. I haven't got the capacity to deal with this new process, this new software, this new tool, this new expectation, this new responsibility. And where does, HR obviously has to serve all of the above.
Yeah.
And that is a challenge.
We need to serve all of the above, but we cannot fix every scenario and every situation. We need to do the best that we can do. So in a situation like that, where you have an employee, you have a leader or a colleague, whatever it is, whomever it is, feels that way, or says, I'm not so sure, I'm not comfortable with this. I oftentimes will say, what is it that you need from me to feel more comfortable?
Right.
What do you need from me? And that's situational. Because what one person what Mary needs, John may not need.
Space, time,
100%.
an ear. Don't fix, just listen. Whatever it is.
Whatever it is, whatever you need. And I may not, in engaging them in that conversation and giving them that, my team or I, we may not ultimately bring them all the way there, but we've at least, in an empathetic,
provided a bridge.
Provided a bridge, and giving them an opportunity to think about it.
Yep.
Take a beat. Yeah. And then learn a little bit more.
Yep. Yeah. Come and help them across.
100%.
But ultimately, they've got to choose to cross it or not.
No, they're not. They're going to cross it over the finish line themselves. So we're not doing it for them.
So as we come to the final pieces, is there a project that you're really excited about that's going to bring a new set of capabilities and reality for you, in the same that you described that change situation of, hey, what is it? Is there something that you foresee out there that is going to bring that same level of, "Ooh, this is interesting, this is exciting, it's in your horizon, Jamie"?
Another good question. I would say for sure, and it's a little bit more of what I've already become very passionate about
Okay.
and developed an expertise in or a specialty in. I mentioned earlier that HR's BFF needs to be
The CRM.
the CFO.
Okay.
And I wholly believe that. That needs to be the case. There is an opportunity. It's sort of ironic, not ironic, but it's the reality of why we're here. Transform is to transform what HR is doing
Yep.
and how we're operating and what with the business, and that is what we need to do. And I believe, to my core, that the HR function is a facilitator of the business.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a partner, but a facilitator. We help drive the business. And taking a more, I would say, being a driver and not a passenger, taking
Yeah.
a more proactive
Not
approach.
victim,
Not a
yeah.
victim, right,
Yeah.
but a facilitator.
Yeah.
That is the future of HR. And that is the HR that a strong CEO will value
Needs.
and needs, especially now with the world economy that's going on.
And so is it about those two entities understanding the two languages of each other? Because, HR is about people, everything's about people, finance about P&L, about stakeholder value, those sorts of things. So HR understanding finance, use case, business case, and finance understanding people. Is that what that is, of understanding those two languages? You said you were fortunate that you were able to get an education of, what does this really mean? How do I present things? How do I position things differently? And did you, in the same case, help educate CFO on some of those things? Are they open to it? Are they not open to it? What does that really mean of becoming a best friend? Because it is probably, yes, going out for dinner and spending human time, but it is also about two languages being better understood by each other.
Yeah, there's two parts
Okay.
to that question. There is one for sure. There's a language component where each side needs to better understand the language and the words that are being used, and the almost the algorithm.
Yeah,
to
the
some
pressures, the decision-making process that
Exactly.
underpins that language.
Exactly. So for sure, there's an education component around the language and the infrastructure of that function within the organization. But there is also a component about ownership. And so we're not here to talk about the finance organization. We're here to talk about the HR organization. And I believe that once that education happens, we need to lean on people, whether it's finance, whether it's loved ones or partners, anyone, to be able to solicit transparent feedback, okay, and guidance. So that is always going to be there, but we need to own the responsibility that we have. And if we really want to facilitate the business, it is not about leaning on everybody else. It's about owning it ourselves and then pulling in the resources around you when you need the support or the sounding board, but knowing that you really own it. And I do believe that is where the opportunity within HR really lies, with all of us at this conference. And that's what I believe will make HR even more influential in how the business operates and runs.
And so for you, if that's part of your soul's expression for Jamie, of I've come to this part in my passage, in my chapter, is that for you doing that in your roles for Jamie, is your soul expression to enable others in your position to be able to achieve that?
Yeah. It's enabling the organization. So it's
Okay.
it's myself as well. I had to learn this initially, but I'm a developer of people.
Yeah.
And so I like to believe I build strong teams.
Yeah.
I want my team to be able to do their jobs. I'm not a micromanager.
So this is within your world
100%.
to live this, to
I live it, I
fully
breathe it.
express that.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe it could become a roadmap, a pathway for others to embrace, that could become part of your own content, own books, own material of how to make your CFO your BFF. I think that'd be a great title for a podcast for books of there's CHRO's handbook on how to make your CFO your best BFF.
Yeah, and it's really about not just bringing people along for the ride, but allowing them to get behind the steering wheel, using cars as analogies, because I can't do everything, but it brings joy to my life when I see other people grow and excel.
Yep.
And so I hold other people accountable for doing their jobs, but I give them the skill set to be able to execute and do it. And if they're willing, then that's the most fantastic thing.
I know you've got another session to go to. In all the episodes I've had, I asked one last question around curiosity.
Let's do it.
And it is, when was the last time you did something for the first time, and what was it?
I rode in a motorized bicycle for the first time up the Hudson River in New York.
Yeah.
So it was cheating a little bit because it was battery powered.
Electric.
It was electric, but I had never rode on the West Side Highway and the Hudson River, which is the West Side Highway. And it was amazing because I don't know if I learned something new because I know how to ride a bike, but I definitely learned that I missed out on this amazing experience of being on the water and seeing the scenery of New York from the outskirts. And it was kind of amazing. And so it was curiosity, and it didn't kill the cat. It actually inspired me to buy a bicycle.
Did it?
It's not a motorized bicycle.
Okay.
It's not an electric bicycle, but it definitely did.
It's interesting when I ask that question, people have this sort of challenge of, well, what was the last thing I did for the first time? And they might take it literally, and then they're overanalyzing, well, what would be a really good thing to say? And others can be the realization of doing something I've done before, but with new eyes. And it sounds like a bit of a combination of that. You've ridden a bike before. Yes, you went somewhere new, a new place, but you sounded like you described you did it with new eyes. You were seeing new things.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful way to live.
Yeah.
Right? Is to go into relationships with new eyes. Yes, bring some of our experience, but also let no experience show up too. In
Correct.
a beautiful way. If people want to get in touch with you, if they're curious about maybe some more digging in of your journey of how you've done that, how do they get in touch? What's the best way?
Send me a direct message on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And I respond to all the messages. So
Absolutely.
please reach out to me. Reach out to me if you're interested.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the time, and look forward to keeping in touch.
For sure.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. AQai, transforming the way people, teams and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.